Now, it sounds shocking, but not only was that something that I was still told when I was growing up, when apartheid was still legitimate, but it contains within it the idea, this notion of fear, that if you unleash a responsibility, potential, possibility and rights to the great hordes of people who haven't yet got them, then how will you keep order? How will you make the world stay as it is? And of course, because we have conservatism, so many people want the world to stay as it is. Now, if the world was staying as it is, we wouldn't have civil rights movement marching forward and allowing it to be possible for Obama to be president. Somebody had to be dogged. Many, many people had to be dogged. And that doggedness about rights is still being marched all over the world. And there's a doggedness to educational rights that I think you are all part of, we are all part of it. And we're not by any means there yet. And my guess is that in 300 years, people will look back to our time with the sort of shock, horror and amusement that they do when they talked about, well, children went down the mines at 6. Because I'm convinced that we can't yet see the paradigm that education will be in a couple of 100 years. If you read Dickens, Hard Times, facts, 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 that was the big concern. That was the big reason that children had to learn. They had to learn facts, drive out all wonder, drive out all aesthetics, drive out all fancy. And how upset Mr. Gradgrind was when he went past a circus tent and saw 2 children creeping under the tent and looking and gazing in wonder. And he thought, who are those horrible children? Who can they possibly be? And of course they were his. You can't drive wonder out of children, and you can't drive curiosity out of children, but you can try, and if you do, it will return in some very warped frameworks. After Dickens, and because of Dickens, who was a great supporter, as you know, of liberal education and the museum movement and the libraries movement, I would look back and say, as a result of people daring to change things, daring to challenge things, we have these extraordinary things which they still don't have in many, many countries. We have free parks with beautiful horticulture. We have playgrounds with swings and slides and seesaws. I mean, these are amazing things that the taxpayer now does for our rights. We have museums, we have libraries, we have public spaces with sculptures in and fountains. Not everywhere, but many places. These are incredible decisions that humans have made about what rights we have to beauty, to solitude, to greenery, the right to go swimming. That's a very strange right, isn't it? But somehow we've given it to ourselves. Now, we think we've given ourselves the right to education, and we had the 1944 Education Act. Hooray! Thank goodness. And of course, in that particular sweep of idealism that happened in post-war Britain, we gave ourselves the right to health, the right to welfare, the right to education, and significantly for me and all my life, the right to the arts. That was the first time in that raft of legislation that went through that public subsidy for the arts happened. And in the Human Rights Declaration, the statement, Declaration 27, every human being has the right to freely make available to themselves art. Now, having the right, and that right being exercised in a truly generous, imaginative, progressive way, these are two different things. You can be given a right on paper, but finding a way to take hold of it and experience it, that's a completely different thing. And the fact that the Human Rights Declaration was written didn't prevent and hasn't prevented the fact that institutionally, through all our subsidised organisations, we still have doors through which many, many people haven't passed and will never pass unless the arts and education become something which we all feel is as much a right as bread and butter and water. We've got such a long way to travel, haven't we? because we don't really think water's a human right yet. I know we think we do, but we haven't made it possible. I know we think food's a human right, but we haven't made it possible. There was a wonderful, wonderful ethical question that came up. I don't know whether any of you heard it on the radio. It's a new moral philosophy group that have set up to look at new kinds of ways of looking at problems. And this was a problem that they set. Okay, you're walking along and you've got very, very nice shoes on and a great new suit. And you go beside a pond and there's a child drowning in the pond. It's not very, very deep. You can wade in, but you're going to ruin your clothes. Do you walk on past and let them drown because you've got your nice outfit, or do you wade in and get them out? Well, obviously you wade in and get them out. And you just let it go, the fact that your suit's ruined, your shoes are ruined. There's a child dying for want of the amount of money that you spent on your suit and shoes in Sudan. Do you make sure that they get that food and water, or do you carry on buying your suit and your shoes? Well, I think we all know the answer to that one. So this is not me standing on any moral high ground, but I'm simply saying that we have not yet remotely sorted out what we actually mean by the practical delivery of human rights. So if people sitting in this room who are very, very committed to the rights of our children in our country to better education, if we know that we haven't sorted out the moral rights of the world yet, and I'm not asking that this room sorts it out today, then we have to understand that there are still thousands, probably millions of people in our own country who don't really believe that we should have an utterly equal education system. Well, we know they don't believe it, because if they did really believe it, it would be happening. And this is really a question of standing up and being counted about why the curriculum should be different. I mean, this is not about playing around with, it could be more interesting, couldn't it, if. I mean, this is about the fundamental issue of, do you think that each child is realizing their potential? And if it's in our hands to help them, should we be trying to do that? And again, I know you've self-selected, so I know you've said yes. But I don't think it's going to be easy. I think it's going to be difficult, because I think that we're up against people for whom that sounds like a lot of bother for lots of children who they actually don't necessarily feel need to be that able, or need to be that gifted, or have the right to stand on a pedestal.